Welcome back. Well, if you watched our last episode, then you probably already know we got the basics of our foundation walls up and standing. But we still have a handful of days worth of work before we can fill these walls with concrete. So we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff this episode and hopefully get these things filled up. But before we start, I think, again, I have to say this. Here we're off the grid. That means no power, no water, or no internet access. So uploading videos in a timely fashion is difficult, if not impossible. And that also means it's tough to answer some of your questions and comments and emails in real time. So as we work through this episode, I'm going to try to answer some of those most common questions I've gotten regarding ICFs and how this whole build process is going along. But I should also say that as we work our way through this house, we're going to cover a lot of these topics in more detail and hopefully answer those questions along the way. So let's get started. So at this point, the majority of bracing and blocking of the walls is already done, but really our first step right now is to finish out that bracing and seal these blocks down to the granite. It's a pretty easy process. We're just taking some spray foam and running it around the entire perimeter, because as we carve these blocks out to fit the contour of the rock, the carving was not exactly perfect. It was close, but not perfect. So a little spray foam, that's going to do the trick. It'll seal it up and help lock these blocks in place, as well as keep concrete from oozing out the bottom as we pour these things. Normally when you're building a house, you'd have all your utilities in place before the house really goes up, but that's not really happening here because building in the area is gone crazy. We've been on a waiting list for a well for months, for power for months, and for septic for months. And we still have more months to go. So we're making provisions in the foundation so we can accommodate that stuff when the time comes. So all of these services are going to come into the house below the frost line. So we're drilling these holes through the ICFs and putting in stubs 2 feet below grade, which is the frost line, 2 feet. So the process is pretty simple. A hole saw does a trick, or at least gets the hole started. So a sawzall finishes out the hole, shove the pipe on through, and once it's through, a little spray foam sealed it up and does the trick. These guys right here, these are what are known as beam pockets, and a beam pocket is exactly what the name implies. It's a pocket for a beam to sit in. These beams are going to actually support our floor joists, so they're sort of important. And we need to really just make provisions in these walls before they're filled with concrete, so we don't have to cut them out later after the concrete is poured. So these blocks of wood that we're inserting, they're really just blockouts. Once these walls are filled with concrete, we'll knock these things out, and that will leave just an empty cavity that our beam will sit in and again support the floors. And while I'm working on these beam pockets, Brenda's actually going to start carving out sections of the granite for little footprints for the support posts that'll transfer the load of the beam down to the granite. So we've got 10 of those that need to happen, and it's going to be a lot of chipping. So most of these little footprints or bases that are going to hold the support posts for the beams, they were pretty simple. We just had to chip out a little flat spot, and that's all it really took. But 2 of these, not so much. The granite was pretty soft and decomposed, and by the time we got down to something that was solid enough where we felt comfortable supporting the weight of the house, we were just left with a big hole. So these are going to be turned into some footings. So as we pour the walls with concrete, we'll fill these up with concrete as well, and that'll give a nice base for these posts to sit on. So a number of you have asked really what our intentions are with this huge underground space. Are we going to fill it in? Are we going to level it out? Are we going to use it for something? Well, yeah, we're going to use it for a lot of stuff. Brenda has visions of not only a root cellar and a wine cellar, but also utilities and mechanicals. This is the perfect spot for it. But really, my guess is if I ever mouth off, this is where I'm getting locked up. So if I go missing, look for me here. But really, as we fill these walls with concrete, not only are we filling up footings, but we are going to fill up some of these really inconsistent spots in the floor just to make it a more usable space. We're not going to pour the whole thing. We're not going to level out the whole thing. We're just filling in some of the big funky spots just so this crawl space or basement, whatever you want to call it, is a little more usable. We will cover vapor barriers and radon mitigation and all that stuff when we get to that portion of the process. We're still a little ways away from it, but there really is just a whole lot of stuff that's going to happen down here. So we'll cover it as we get there. Well, we're pretty much done with this thing, other than concrete. So I think at this point we just got a little bit of cleanup left, and that's kind of it. But if you've been watching the news, then you probably know the northwestern portion of the United States has been in the middle of the biggest heat wave on record, like shattering records. So that means a couple of things here. One is it took us a whole lot longer to get this all finished up than I thought it would. I thought we'd just be a few days. We've been at this little odds and ends kind of things for over a week. Heat makes things tough. But that also has put concrete behind schedule even longer than it was before. We've been on a waiting list for a while, and we still have a number of days before our turn comes up. So I think at this point, I'm just going to clean this place out and wait for concrete. And we'll check back in you when it shows up.
Big day, concrete day. Woo! Yep. We expected to do all the work, and these people showed up, and they're the ones that do all the work, so...
Morning, Brad.
Morning.
Concrete day.
Concrete day, and the temperature's down about into the high 80s, so that'll be nice.
Hallelujah.
It's still
It's
only
cold.
11 o'clock. There's still time for it to get nice and warm.
Hi, Chris. Well, look at this. We got ourselves a foundation. It's pretty exciting and honestly a huge relief that all these walls stood as the concrete was going in. I had my doubts about it a little bit, but here they are, full of concrete, and they're standing. It's a miracle. But I should say Brad, Chris, and Sarah, thanks a million for coming out and helping. We really couldn't have done it without you. You guys are the best, for real. But I think we're going to call that kind of an episode for now, because we got a foundation. That was the whole point of this. But really, we got a whole lot of stuff coming up, because it takes a million steps to build a house. So we'll keep you posted when we got stuff to post, or when we can find internet access, more importantly. But for now, that's it. Thanks again for watching. As always, see you soon.